we've been working, Wes and I, for a long time now, for well over 10 years on this project, but it goes like a little bit longer than that on games in general. And that's kind of the origins of these of where these tools came out. So one thing I want to show you is I'll be doing a live demo really quickly on one of the tools that we use. And okay, great. And you can see what I'm holding in my hands here is a virtual camera, very, very base unit virtual camera. We have the camera controls on here that if you wanted to operate with your hands. But you can see that it's tracking my movements, and what I do reflects on the screen. And I have the ability to be virtually present here at a specific scale. So, for example, you know, in this case, I'm quite larger than life because I can move myself quite a bit by just moving at my desk as I'm sitting down here. And that's an option that I can change. We have this scene here with some ocean assets and animations and particle systems and all these things, all these goodies that come from you know, the latest Unity version with HDRP. And I'm able to move myself virtually around. I can locate myself. I can pause time. I can rewind, scrub time as they call it in film. I can go frame by frame, and these are all important things to be able to do on a movie where you're previewing what you're going to do. So what we like to do is we like to animate an entire scene as though you were going to pre-visit or visualize it, but without the shots. So you have all the motion of a scene.
Here's a result from
And
the
then I guess Siri heard, or Google heard what I'm saying. We have to the ability to give creators, DP, cinematographer, visual effects supervisors, the ability to enter the things they want to do in terms of camera gates and aspect ratios for their crops, lens kits that they want to use, and when they're on the replica of the set they're going to be on, then they can choose to flip through these options. So this is me flipping through the prime lenses that I might carry, or you know, ability to zoom in and out. And if I want to replicate specific types of camera rigs, for example, if I want to do like a dolly shot here, I can simply bring in the dolly and position it where I want to take it. And you know, if I wanted to match it to the ship, and also if I wanted to have it locked to the ship. So if I just have a dolly here and I hit the motion, you can see the ship's moving on its own, and I want the ability to be able to lock myself to the ship. So I simply do the locking feature, and I can bookmark this position in time, and I can start doing a take. So let's pick a lens, and I can also do depth of field effects if I want to do less on T-stop, and I want to spot focus on things, I can do that. These are all things that cinematographers like to use to pre-visualize what they're going to film. So I can start with this guy in focus and start rolling. And focus on the distance as I'm going. And cut. We just did a take, and I can go into the review mode and check out what I did. So for example, here we have a lot of takes. You can rank the takes, whether you like them or not, and play them back. And this is simply playing back what I just recorded. So you can see by being able to simulate rigs of any kind, we basically allow DPs and cinematographers, visual effects supervisors, to communicate about what they want to shoot, and they can basically virtually film everything they want. They can use the touch screen on the devices. In this case, for example, if I want to zoom in with the phone. So it just gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of covering a scene that they're going to be shooting. So I'm going to take that off here. So I can go on and on with the dive demo because it's fun. But I'm going to hand it back to the panel, and meanwhile I might loop a video once Chloe joins us. All right. Hope
Hey,
that
Habib.
works. Could you guys
Hey,
see it properly? Or hey, Chloe's here.
hey, Habib. Hey, everyone.
Awesome.
Hey, Chloe.
Hey.
Wes, I would like to have you start. And what was your vision for the VCAM system?
Well, actually, it's kind of a shared vision between I and Habib. We started working together about 20, I guess it was about 20 years ago, and we worked on. Habib had come from the film industry, and I had been in the games industry, and we kind of started in a new company together at the same time on the same day, and he sat next to me that day too. So we were basically best friends from the start. But yeah, we started working on video games, and Habib realized that a lot of the things that are done in video games for cutscenes and animation and things like that were very crude. There wasn't a lot of finesse to it as there would be in film. So he and I and some other folks worked to build tools to allow for proper cinematography in video games. This was 2001, 2002. And we had done that we used tools like that for quite some time. Later, though, we both left that company on the same day. We didn't know that was going to happen. But and then joined another company together on the same day. Again, we didn't know that was going to happen either. The universe keeps putting us together, and I'm kind of getting sick of it. But anyways, he and I got together and started working with a few other guys to build the same kind of tool again, but from a different perspective of like, we realized that, well, wait a minute, all these tools, all these really cool interactive systems that we built to make video games could work perfectly well in making film. So that was the original vision, was taking all the learnings and all the lessons we had from real-time interactivity that video games gave us and applying it to filmmaking. Now, we weren't necessarily gamifying films, but we were taking and allowing people to do things that would have taken days, just minutes, because they were able to review stuff right then and there instead of wait for dailies and things like that. So yeah, and we started with a game engine too, the Unity Technologies Unity engine, and we built on top of that. So that was really kind of the beginning of it all.
And why did Steven Spielberg get in touch with you for Ready Player One? What was the reason he wanted to use your system other than just shooting live on a film set in a traditional way of filming a film?
Well, we had already worked on a few other projects before Ready Player One, and as is anything in Hollywood, things kind of bounce from one thing to the next. So we ended up staying on and working with the virtual production crew on Ready Player One, and that we had previously worked with on Jungle Book, and it proved to be even more fun because we did some amazing things that we weren't able to do on the other production.
Yeah, what kind of led to the other, and the teams that had worked with our tools were pushing it further and being able to customize and add things to it. So I think we were lucky to be starting things that early to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, it was very natural for Spielberg and even his crew to use these tools. It was actually interesting because they picked them up and just use them so intuitively, and then things got extended from that. They started. I remember I was in London and there on set for about a month, and they would even ask for new features and new ideas to be added, and I'd be in the back room writing code as fast as I could so that the director could have his features before the next shot.
Yeah, because traditionally when you add a new feature in a regular feature movie production, how long does that take?
Well, like like if we made video games, building a new feature for a video game could take days, even weeks. Typically because that kind of process is more about building a product, where in this scenario we're building a workflow or a tool. So it was easier for us to quickly add or change things, even while sitting right there on the edge of the set. We could change things about the tool and give the director or the cinematographer new ways of doing things without having to wait.
And during Ready Player One, this is important because of the storyline of the movie and all of them embodying their virtual selves, I guess. Could you talk a little bit about storyline and how these new virtual tools helped the crew and the cinematographer and all the creatives to connect with characters that they couldn't actually see in real life?
That was the part that actually I was saying gave us some opportunities that we never had on Jungle Book. And Jungle Book was amazing because there's all these virtual animals around a single live actor. And this was kind of the opposite, where all the actors were real, but they had to be these avatars. And they each had their own persona and different features about them. And some of the avatars were even larger than the actual actor playing the avatar. So we would what we do is we put all the actors into VR, and we had built the team that I was working with had built one of the largest mocap arenas you've ever seen, and it was raised pretty quickly. It just took a couple months, but we would be able to bring all of them in, 5 or 6 actors at the same time, and Stephen and a couple of his crew as well, and they'd all be in virtual reality. They'd all have their VR helmets on. At the same time, they're being tracked by the motion capture system. So their bodies are all moving in virtual space. And what each actor was seeing was the actors would see Stephen standing there with the camera, but it's a virtual camera. It's not real. It's in virtual space. It's virtual reality. But they could play to it. They could see it. They could act to the camera. It was beautiful. And they could act to each other because they could all see each other in their forms. And it just kind of allowed for a much more natural interaction because they could really feel and see who each other was in the shot. It was quite amazing.
So I'm not sure if most of our viewers have ever worked on a movie set, so they may not be familiar with even how you film a movie. So maybe we bring it back to HABIB's demo, and we should really tell everybody that what's in front of the camera doesn't actually exist. It only exists in a virtual world, and it's built. HABIB, can you bring back the demo, please? And we're going to talk through why it's so much easier to use this tool versus real life.
Yes, I'm actually going better than that. I'm going to change my screen. I guess if I'm going to be the presenter on screen, then people can see this clear. Otherwise, I could share it as a desktop. You tell me how this looks.
That looks good.
So I'll just talk over this. So basically, there's Chloe right there actually using the VR. we had her be our guinea pig to see how things work. But this video shows you people using the tools, and you can see what they're holding and how they're operating it, and what the results are on the screen. In case of VR, your head becomes the camera, or at least it becomes your viewer into that virtual world. So you can see as people are turning their heads around, they're able to see what's on the screen. And then whenever someone's holding their right hand becomes like the viewfinder in VR, and that's how they can compose shots in virtual reality. You can see here we have one of our team members, Patrick, who's implemented the DP wheels to operate what DPs usually use to operate camera heads on a film set, on a real film set. Those are the real authentic wheels from our DP here, David Stump, who was actually doing the virtual cinematography in the corner there. And so we're able to bring in different kinds of input devices to make people use what they're used to. But we also have to make these virtual cameras that track what they're doing as though they would be holding a real camera, but it's actually virtual. So you can see here the results of, for example, what they can see in terms of the motion of what they're holding, their ability to control things. In this case, I'm doing live mocap as well for that piece with the astronauts. I'm looking at myself on the laptop screen to make sure my hands are reaching the right places. The right way to do that is if I was in VR. Actually, next time I'm going to try that one. But that's a really cool probability of when you're in VR and motion capturing yourself, kind of like Ready Player One in your living room. And we have the ability to not only compose the shots but also light them as close as possible to the way you want to light them on a real set. So the new HDRP lighting in Unity, for example, lets you mimic global illumination and atmospheric lighting and how light bounces. Most importantly, the real world light intensities. So you can actually put a physical light in and say this is 2000 lumens and it's 3500 Kelvin, and it would replicate the intensity and the drop off of a light like that if you were on a real set. So it's great to see the Unity developers pushing towards replicating realism and photorealism on set, while we try and capture all the tools that are needed for a cinematographer to film these the shots. And what I think is really interesting is when people have the freedom of exploring, because it's easy to use, then they come up with ideas they wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And so they would be experimenting with shots. One of the things I'm blown away by is we have this short animation that we use for people to demo to see. I've never seen anybody shoot it twice the same way. Every single person has done their coverage of this scene in their own unique way, and every time we're blown away by their creativity. And I think that's what's really the key. And maybe Chloe can speak to her experience trying the tools. I think you're in this video somewhere again, coming up.
That was very exciting experience that I had with under the help of HABIB in his office. It was very memorable. And then after we had the demo day in HABIB's office, I'm actually working on a film. That's the budget of the film is considered pretty like a median or above median level in China. And then, so everyone knows that the virus was bursting in China at the end of last year. And then, so people, especially in working in the filmmaking industry, they pretty much paused the work in China as well as like globally. But the thing is that because we were preparing the filmmaking, and then with the HABIB's technology, the Unity game engine, we actually was imagining that we can kick off the project as soon as possible. So actually weeks ago, me and HABIB was working on building up the assets and looking even into, so the film is about some like explosion based on a real incident in China. And then we were looking into the maps and trying to build up all the assets and making it 3D so that like with all the people or the crews of the main creative team separated into like a Hong Kong, the mainland China, as well as like a US, everyone can look into the same assets as well as the model and then discuss the same thing. And I think like nowadays, people are using technology to enable the creative. I used to be working in the industry of like having blockchain enabling the internet products in the content industry. For example, like short videos, gaming, live streaming. So I understand like Wes was talking about like, coming from the gaming industry and then trying to enable something about the filmmaking. So that was very exciting, and I really do see like this kind of technology that helping the preparation better for the filmmaking will be the future that we'll be encountering very soon. Yeah.
So I think I'll shed a little light on background. So when I started in the film industry, the only way you could work with visual effects was through sort of the keypad on the computer. So as a cinematographer, you're the one holding the camera, and it's a skill set, and you find yourself syncing with the body language of an actor, and you can feel the actor. This is part of the art of being a cinematographer. But when you work in a virtual world, you had to move the camera movements by using keys on a keyboard, and it's just not organic. The magic that happens on a film set is that organic, that spontaneity between actor and cinematographer. That's where the magic is. And this is what we're able to capture now. What you've actually done is you've given the cinematographer a physical tool to be able to act organically. Wes, do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. A lot of what we do is attempt to replicate that feel of that camera. Especially when it comes to, well, everything from obviously from you saw in depth of field and lens calculations, things like that. That's just kind of expected. But also when we go out and we do things like put those rigs together, like like there was a track dolly and other things, jibs and things. We really spend a lot of time analyzing the reactions of a mechanical device like a jib and or like a dolly or even like a tripod, and give it that same kind of feel in the virtual space. So you have the same kind of lag and motion and things like that. So you get what you expected. The goal has never been to change the way the cinematographer works. We don't want to change that part. What we want to do is remove the barriers that have been built up over the past, I don't know, 30, 40 years that have been separating the cinematographer from the art, and the director as well. We've been getting it more and more so where you can even go and do an entire, you can do entire scenes and never see your results for even weeks. It isn't as you don't get that instant feedback. And now with the ability to do real-time computations like this and real-time interaction, whether you're in VR or not, you're able to have instant feedback, and that's what gives you that magic. The actor and the camera playing off of each other is so key to getting that right emotion, and we believe that we can bring that to any kind of film now, whether it's an animated feature or something with lots of special effects or visual effects, or or just a practical shoot. I think we're trying to basically to bring film back to its roots is what we're trying to do, but we do it by going forward.
Can I wind back time to Blade Runner 2049? Obviously, you're a fan of the original movie. How did you get the guts to say you can improve the next one?
Well, actually, you should talk to Habib about this one because Habib did most of the work on it. But I'll say that really it was a great experience because we got to work with some amazing creatives that let us help them, and I think that was the biggest thing, But Habib got to sit there and spend grueling hours in the post production getting things right. But Habib, why don't you tell your stories there?
Yeah, it was really fantastic to be working on that project. I got very lucky, and John Nelson, the visual effects supervisor, called me in to help look at some things in post production. Him and I knew each other since the days where he was nominated for an Oscar for Gladiator, and we were competing up against him with Perfect Storm, and we remained friends ever since and wanted to work together. And really amazing to work with Denis, who's a visionary director, and it's a sequel to my favorite film of all time. So all the boxes were checked for me. As we were working on the visual effects side of things, some issues came up with shots that Denis wanted to do differently or add, and the editors, Javier and Joe Walker, they both knew about the virtual cinematography tools I'd been showing around. So they got together with me, and we basically experimented with how some of the scenes could be done or redone using those assets that were already used for previs before. So MPC had created some previs, and I brought in those assets into our real-time tools, and we started filming them virtually. And when they showed those to Denis, he was actually supportive to try it, which we were ecstatic about. So he was able to redo or add shots, scenes that were completely virtual, so we could simply send the camera information or the basic animation to the different studios. but it was really interesting to see him use the tools and how his reaction to them, to have the freedom and flexibility to basically move around the sets in real time. One of the shots that we were doing the camera work on involved the spinner in the trash mesa where the big ships are, and it involved stitching 2 shots together. And the spinner, which is the flying car, we're never allowed to call it a car, but the spinner would had to make a move around some pylons and over a ship before it gets harpooned. And when Denis tried to perform that actual flight path, because we have the option of driving props or vehicles as well live before we film them, and he realized that that's an impossible move. So it actually changed the outcome, where he decided to just fly and gain altitude immediately. It altered the action during the shot because he was able to experience it interactively. Then he was back in the seat of the spinner and he performed the camera move where you're looking up ahead as you gain altitude, and then you look down to the lower left and see the ship. So each project we work on, we learn so much from the creators. They come up with really interesting things that they want to do, and then we try and provide that for them. And that's what's really been interesting about the tools to date, because every single project's added something major to it. The Greyhound film with Tom Hanks needed to be anchored on a ship at any given time because every single thing was moving all the time. So we had to have a really robust way to be able to basically pluck the camera down on a moving target.
So what I actually love about it, specifically on Greyhound, is that when we say virtual cinematography, people maybe imagine that we can move anywhere in 3D space, but actually what you're doing is you're replicating actual cinematography tools. So you have the tripod, and instead of having it out in the ocean, you actually build a barge for the tripod to sit on so that you can actually move with the Greyhound, with the ship. Can you explain why you built physical tools rather than hovering around like a video game?
Yeah, I guess we were always fascinated to replicate what's on set, because we know that's how cinematographers would be filming them. So if someone was going to use a dolly, we wanted to provide a way for them to preview that. Not only that, if they can quickly switch between a dolly and a tripod, then they can make a decision about which one's better. What do they prefer? And even while they're filming, the pre-visualization phase is one thing, but even on set, they could have the tools there and try something out before they actually do it physically, because just the physical fact of moving a dolly is a really time-consuming thing to do on set. So you'd much rather be able to virtually try it. And so that's why we started to try and emulate things, even drones, how, if you were flying a drone physically. And Wes's background in physics, doing all the physics in James Bond and Need for Speed and all those games, was a testament to how the cameras always felt so physical and believable. They always moved with this kind of real world feeling to it.
I would actually like to invite Chloe into the conversation here, because I do want to talk about how this technology started in the US and how it's now migrating into China.
So this is very interesting because we are just kicking off the technology, or kicking off the collaboration there. So we'll actually have a conversation with the director, like aiming this month, and started everything. And we're very confident that the director might want to being one of the pioneers to try this out, because he's a very famous director that I cannot disclose the name at this moment. He's from Hong Kong, but he started his career as a cinematographer. So he would be very excited to leverage those technology to having both the, let's say, the perspective of the director for the creative side, as well as using the technology to enable him to also see on the cinematographer side. Yeah.
So do I understand you correct that this doesn't exist in China?
Virtual production, not that much. Yeah. people are having the concept. They know what's the most advanced things in Hollywood. They're mimicking, but in terms of like the technician or the tech support or even like a HABIB himself to working on a project, it's not there yet.
And in your eyes, Chloe, what makes this so much different to previous productions that you worked on?
Actually, I didn't work on too much of the productions previously, but as the first project, that's the biggest commercial movie, probably will be on the theater next year. We're thinking this will be a very good trial for the entire market. And as long as if it carries out as the good results that we expected, it will be carrying a lot of like attention or the spotlights that people will see this as a new way to think about the filmmaking in China.
All right, Wes, let's get really nerdy here. I want you to talk about the physics.
You're muted.
Awesome. Okay, physics. Well, I mean, there's a couple layers. Like I said, optics was an interesting one because I had to do a lot of research to get and this was early on too. The newer versions of Unity actually have this built in, but early on, I had to spend a lot of time figuring out the optics of depth of field and things like that, and creating shaders that could replicate it. And so that was kind of one layer of things. And again, in most physics you do in these kinds of scenarios, we're not going really deep. We're not doing quantum mechanics or anything, but we do research the domain, and we do find the right answers, not necessarily the deep answers, but the right answers to get us over the line. When dealing with rigs and things like this, there's a lot of it's a lot of dynamics and physical calculations, dealing with friction and drag and things like this. So those kind of simulations are a bit easier to handle, but there's a lot of them, and when they start multiplying up. So yeah, a lot of it is really a lot about studying the thing you're working on, whether it be a crane or a jib or whatever, and understanding the components well enough that you can replicate that mathematics.
We have an interesting question from the audience, which leads me to think that he knows a lot about this because it's not your standard question.
Uh-oh.
All right, I'm going to read it out. Can you talk a little about in-camera visual effects in the context of your existing virtual production pipeline? Has anyone been able to do real-time deep image compositing in the context of a game engine? For example, let's say we were working on Twister today with a CG Twister using a fluid simulation and volume render. How would you enable a dynamic Twister integrated into a real-time game engine? So I'm so sorry. I thought our audience wasn't educated in the movie world, but I was wrong. I stand corrected.
Game engines now are actually a lot better at this, and I mean we're not at the exact point where we can do everything that post-production does. With compositing and layering and all this kind of stuff, but we or per pixel calculation, but we are getting there, and game engines like the one we use, Unity, are quite capable of handling quite a bit of data in the frame. And so the visual effects at the visual effects level, when it comes to especially depth-based effects and screen-based effects, those things are pretty simple to do. As with all systems, you always have these trade-offs between speed and fidelity. But the visual effects are they're evolving quite fast.
And I would like to talk a little bit about real-time lighting. So as a cinematographer, we spend hours, days lighting a film set. There's a joke, why don't cinematographers smoke? Well, take them forever to light it. But yes, we will take weeks to light something. Can you please tell them a little bit of how ray tracing works in the game engine and how it allows us to actually test multiple lighting in a very short space of time, actually real time, which is not possible in real life?
Before we start talking about ray tracing, we should start talking about the non-ray tracing solutions, which have been advancing for the past decade or two, and the real-time lighting systems that have been in engines like this have been allowing us more and more to add in multiple layers of lights and go on and on. It used to be when we started doing this stuff, I think back probably in the early 2000s, you couldn't have more than 3 or 4 lights in your scene before the calculations just went nuts and it wasn't able to handle everything. So there was a lot of trickery done. Nowadays, we can have hundreds and hundreds, of lights and not see any impact. And the power of being able to composite lighting in and bring and change the lighting in real time to the specifications that you want, like dialing in the color temperature, dialing in the lumens, things like this, where you can actually get the right settings, even mimic the lights you would use on stage. That stuff is come an amazing long way. Where we were seeing advancements now, though, is now people are looking at things like reflections and refraction and light bouncing throughout rooms, because you open your window and all of a sudden the entire room, you have a crack in the window, the entire room lights up. But that's because you're getting an immense amount of bounce. Those particles are bouncing all over the place and creating light. So, we emulate that with ray tracing. And so with ray tracing, we're now able to, we've always been able to get amazing shots in post-production, because we can sit there and render a frame for an hour or two and go, hey, it's done. Look, it looks great. But that's one frame. We would need to do this at 30 frames a second, 24 frames a second. We need to do this so that the cinematographers can see it while they're moving the light. So game engines like Unity now actually have come up with amazing ways of allowing you to maneuver and move things like lighting around and the camera, and with getting near real-time updates to those reflections. So the new features going forward, this technology being real-time and in the hands of filmmakers is going to change a lot when it comes to blocking.
I think I'll just bring in a real-life example without naming the name of the feature, but HABIB was showing some images of astronauts on an EVA. And actually, while we were shooting this movie in the virtual world with virtual actors, the lighting was so accurate that we could actually test multiple types of light. How does light bounce in space? Well, we don't necessarily know, but we have a good idea, and the game engine could actually show us how the light would bounce. But what we realized that we wouldn't have managed to imagine in real life is that the sun in space has nothing filtering it, which means it's a very direct beam hitting the actors. And this didn't tweak until we were actually on the virtual film set, that when we replicate this scene in real life to get the actors' facial expressions, we're actually going to have to rent a much larger studio than the one we rented, because there's no way we could light the scene with such a direct, large source of lighting. So it actually saved the production a bunch of money, because we realized this could potentially ruin the movie if we didn't fix it now.
Yeah, perfect example of why you would want to visualize your film beforehand. There's so many things you may not have thought of. And when it comes to just trying it out on your simple CG mockup, it's very easy to suddenly say, oh, this building needs to move over. We're gonna need a bigger boat. So these are critical things, and the lighting aspect. To me, what's interesting is anything that's interactive. It's shaving weeks and months off of your schedule to create it. So in the visual effects world, it takes anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour to 5 hours to see the results of one frame when you tweak the lighting and then you want to see the result. And so during a given day, you only get so many guesses. So if it takes an hour, you only get 8 guesses, let's say, if you're working 8 hours. That's how many times you get to decide the brightness of a certain light before it's time to then, having to render it for the full shot overnight. When something's interactive, every time you're changing the dial, and you're getting the feedback visually and you're altering it, every cycle of that is saving you that 1 hour. So as a result, you're able to dial in the exact amount that you want, achieving the perfect amount without having to constantly do the throwing the dart game. So it's basically a different result.
So I want to jump into the future. We're in a very unique situation right now with the pandemic, and it's a global pandemic as well, which has stopped film production all over the world. But it hasn't actually halted production for you guys, has it?
No, actually, it's increased a little bit, where a lot of productions can continue working remotely. With the nature of our tools, we're able to. I'm currently working with a few directors from different parts of the world, where we're putting things in scenes, doing screen shares, deciding on designs and shot designs, and then we're able to package these up and send them a digital file where they can basically run it and experience that space interactively themselves. And then, much like the rig I showed you, they're able to do their own location scouting virtually, or do their own shots. And this becomes a really great interactive communication tool.
So Chloe, how are you managing communication around the world, and how is this going to help you?
So currently we are all working remotely. Like the co-producer and the director is from Hong Kong. The AD team is from mainland China. And for our visual effects company, that we have some employees in China as well. And they're trying to support our work from US here. HABIB is working on building up a previs at this moment, that we already have a couple of meetings, and then go through the things like we look into the location from a Google Earth, and then we talk about different things, how tall they are based on their shadows and stuff, and trying to make it into a very realistic model, so that everyone can look into later when we're doing the pre-production. So pretty much everything is online at this moment. But we're thinking about kicking off the production stuff within 2 to 3 months in mainland China, because the pandemic situation is more common in China at this moment. But in terms of HABIB, we're still working remotely with the main creative team, that everyone will be located in China. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also you have the devices like Oculus Rift being sold out online, because a lot of people can use those with our tools. We have a VR mode where you saw Chloe roaming around the set, our demo scene. A lot of people now at home want to, I guess, have time to do a lot of VR, or these devices are now hard to find. So that's another good sign.
Yeah.
And HABIB, how do your tools connect people? Because my experience was that I could actually connect with the actors on an emotional level and a sensory level. How could you talk a little bit about how your tools introduce sensitivity into the filmmaking?
Wow, haven't had that question before. I think you're talking about the effect of people being able to use the tools to experience the scenes, or as a way that they would communicate.
Both.
Wow. I think one of the things I realized looking at our reels when we like to record our shoots is the delight on the cinematographer's face. That anyone who's reacting with the scene, it just gets this huge smile on their face, because they're able to experience interactively something that they're working on creatively. So I think it touches everybody from that point of view, where they're able to see their vision, and then they're able to adjust it to what they want. And so that's just always making them super happy with what they're doing. And also they're learning from it. They're understanding the limitations that they're going to be able to deal with. What are the things they have to be able to face? in terms of projects where we do the motion capture beforehand or during the project, that's also been spectacular to see, people putting on the VR headsets and experiencing that space that they're going to be in, and reacting to each other's avatars as opposed to what they physically look like. It's a good way to cheat the physical limitations.
Wes, can you weigh in on this a little bit?
Yeah, what it does is it allows the cinematographer or the director, whoever's behind that camera, the ability not only to be in the same space as their subject, but command the space. And I think that's what's quite unique here in this realm, because like you talked about, creating a lighting setup can take quite a bit of time. And if you're moving around rigs, and trusses and things to handle that lighting, you could be all day. But when you're in preparation, you're in design, and you're trying to figure out what the right angle is to get that emotion that you're looking for, having full power over everything from the light to the furniture, the walls, and all at your fingertips while you're framing that subject and while you're getting ready for that action. That's amazing. It's super powerful, and it's something that hasn't been. I think it's unique to this age of virtual filmmaking. It's very unique to now to be able to maneuver virtual sets at the same time as capturing the shot. Now, this could be used. This information that you're doing can be used for a practical shot later, or it could be used for an animation or anything like that down the line. But the reality is that during pre-production, it's all the same. You're just trying to move things around and get the right answer. So for us, we just spend a lot of time looking at this world of filmmaking and figuring out what matters the most when doing that, and then bring it in and try and get that into the virtual world.
And what I love when you build your tools is that you make them as familiar to regular filmmaking tools as possible. Why was that important to you, to not actually change the feel, the physical look is different, but the feel and the handling is actually the same?
We even examined lots of different film cameras and to see how their heads-up displays work and things like that, and we came up with a kind of our own mix on it. But yeah, we really wanted to go for the language that was already filmmaking. Again, we're not trying to change filmmaking. I mean, there's nothing, it changes itself. That's the beauty of it, is it changes itself over time. And it's just an art, it evolves. And what we're trying to do is just, get all the things out of the way so the artist can get to their canvas. And this is that's why it's so important for us to follow and bring in all the entire language of the cinematographer, of the director, of the production designer, all of the people. We want to bring their language to bear, because that's if they're going to create there, they need to have all their tools.
So I think this can be slightly misunderstood. I think actors will freak out now because they think that these digital renders are going to replace their job. Or is it? What's the future of filmmaking here?
No, I don't think it's about that. Like I said, if you're using virtual cinematography or virtual production in the pre-production stage of things, really it's about discovering. And in that sense, you're most likely going to bring the actor in too, or if not a proxy, and have them interact with you in virtual space, so you can figure out what you're trying to do later. So, and then, when you still get on set, if this is a practical shoot, it's a practical shoot. It's not going to replace the actor with anything. So, I think that kind of decision has nothing to do with whether or not you're using virtual cinematography or virtualization tools. The decision is going to be, is this an animated feature, or is it not, right? So it's those kind of decisions have nothing to do with this.
We actually have an interesting question come in, and I kind of want Habib to get ready the live demo again for this one. So the question is, how much of the daily work completed needs to be inside the virtual space using VR headsets? How does this complicate communication between people on set? Is motion sickness a huge problem? So let's have a look at the live demo, Habib, if you're able to bring it up.
Yeah, sure thing. So the question was about motion sickness, you said?
That is part of the question, yes. How does this complicate communication between people on set if they're all inside of virtual reality headsets? Which obviously they're not. You actually have the choice to be on different devices. So how about explain this and show it physically with the live demo?
Right. Okay, so let me see. I'm going to share my screen. Optimized for video. Great. And going to find where I am here.
We see
after
the demo.
we left things. Yeah, so here's the ship right now. And I'm going to, we have a bunch of rigs. You can see, for example, the dolly simulation, or the rail is like a curved way to put splines down and follow those. But the moment I'm going to connect here the virtual rig here, they wanted to know how you can avoid motion sickness or the ability to get a sense of the space. So I'll describe some things. So first of all, right now, like we're watching this on a 2D screen, and I can, I can fly around. One thing I can say is you would definitely get used to the controls very quickly. My introduction to them was when I first started working on games. And it's a standard thing that people do on games. It's called a debug camera. They can fly around with the controls to offset themselves. But you get really used to the motion of what you're looking at, and because you're the one in control, you're the ones who's actually driving the controls for it to be a certain place. And then when you put the VR headset on, you have a sense of volume. You have a sense of dimension and distance. It's an incredible way to give you that sense of size and how far something is. A good example is the top mast of this ship. If I went and looked down from there in 2D, I have the perspective of, I'm probably high up. But boy, when I experienced that in VR, you definitely get that height phobia sense of this unbelievable space that you're looking at. So I always thought that was really, really interesting. The relativity of how I perceive something differently, whether I'm looking at it two-dimensionally through the lens of the camera or actually filming it in VR in that space.
So Habib, I believe we're out of time, but just to clarify the question is that not everybody has to wear a VR headset. You can access this virtual world in any way through a phone screen, TV screen, or in a virtual world if you actually want to step right into the world and have a look.
That's right, exactly. And you can also have it on your mobile. I guess it's not showing through, but you have the mobile device and the touch controls on there. And that's one of the advantages of using the Unity engine, is it can be put on a lot of different devices. But yeah, VR is only optional. But interestingly, we have collaborative VR where you have multiple people in the same space. But you can also have some people that aren't in VR, but all of them are interacting with the same scene in different ways.